Pokémon Legends Arceus added a new feature where you can manually choose when to evolve your Pokémon, but what if you didn't know that button existed while doing a Hardcore Nuzlocke? All the rules are in the description, but to summarize the rules of a Hardcore Nuzlocke, if a Pokémon faints, it's no longer usable. You can only catch one Pokémon in a route, and you can't use items in battle. Pokémon Legends Arceus did something that no one expected Game Freak to do. They actually changed up the formula. Amazing for a regular playthrough, but for the Nuzlocke, I've had to be a bit creative with the rules. I consider routes to be named areas on the map. The lines are a bit blurry on where one begins and one ends, so I might mess up sometimes. I lose my encounter if it runs away, faints, or despawns. Just ending a battle doesn't necessarily mean that I lose that encounter. However, I won't be allowed to use healing items while engaged with an encounter, in or out of battle. This is more relevant when I try and catch alphas, which brings me to, in each area I'll allow myself to catch one alpha, but that will count as that route's encounter. If I fail an alpha encounter, I can still try for a different one, but I lose the encounter for that route. Technically, you don't actually have to battle any of the nobles, but with how few story battles there actually are, I'll force myself to battle them at least once. And I won't be using any EV items. There is a good balance as to how you can use them, but I still feel it could make the game a bit too easy. And lastly, the rules for this challenge. I'm not allowed to evolve Pokemon. That's it. I'll also be a bit more lenient with the species clause where I'll allow some of my encounters to be evolved forms of the same Pokemon line. And that's that, so let's get started. Arceus sends us back in time to plug his merch while there's still a gap in the market. We also get told to seek out all Pokemon without break our arbitrary rules. Instead of listening to the literal god, I follow some random stranger who seems all too happy to be sending me to my potential death. At least he offers me a meat shield. I decide to go with the Rowlet as I figure it has the most weaknesses, thus making the game harder. Also a good time to note that I completely forgot to give my Pokemon nicknames throughout the run, so yeah. After catching my fake encounters to secure some shelter, I can now freely explore the first area, and thus the Nuzlocke begins. I first get myself a Weasel from Aspiration Hill, manage to catch a Ponyta in the Horseshoe Plains, and then wait until nightfall to catch Drifloon in the Flora Gardens. Unfortunately, Rowlet's already getting quite close to the first level cap, so I put him away before the fight with the Kari. Pikachu leaves with a Thunder Shock doing about a third, and Ponyta goes for an Ember doing about half. The Thunder Shock doesn't get the kill, and Ember gets a higher roll, taking Pikachu out. Easy enough so far, so surely that's going to be the standard, right? I add Rowlet back to the team, and now we can fight Mai, who has a Munchlax that's pretty scary this early on. Rowlet starts off with the Leafage, barely scratching Munchlax, and it goes for a rollout doing over half. I send out Weasel and immediately get off an Aqua Jet, and Munchlax uses rollout once again doing over half. I switch into Drifloon and it hits a Hypnosis, making Munchlax drowsy, and it misses a turn. I think I'll be relying on this move more than I should. Confusion does quite a bit of damage as the new drowsy status lowers the Pokemon's defense, and Munchlax is now below half. It loses another turn. Drifloon uses an Agile Style Confusion, gaining another turn to use a Strong Style Confusion to bring Munchlax down. Onwards to the Deer Track path where I catch a Geodude and we get a true message from God. Well, I'm not ready to catch a God yet, and I still need my Alpha slot, so I send out Rowlet as it has the type advantage. So I send out Geodude as it has the type advantage. I send out Ponyta as it has the type advantage. It gets off an Ember and actually manages to survive a hit. I don't want to risk more of my team, so another Ember and Ponyta goes down. And this allows Drifloon to take Kricketune out with an Agile Style Confusion. And there was no part of me that was expecting to lose one, let alone half of my team in this battle. And we're only the third story battle in. After putting my Pokemon to rest, I witness a domestic dispute. I don't want to see Mom and Dad fight, so I head back to the field to trap some friends. I catch a less vengeful god that luckily doesn't kill any of my Pokemon, and decide to Psyduck into the forest. On the way to the Heartwood Forest, I lay eyes upon my first alpha that I consider catching, Bibarel. It breaks out of my first ball, so I try and find a better vantage point. Breaking out of my second ball, it's about to spot me, so I send out a Pokemon. After Bibarel takes out both my Stantler and my Pikachu, I decide that I've had enough losses and call it quits, losing my first alpha encounter. Further up, I fight Leon to take control of his treehouse. Drifloon immediately hits a Hypnosis and Goomy uses Bubble into Acid Armor. I use a Calm Mind as Goomy's too drowsy to move. An Agile Style Confusion does about 40%, and a Strong Style 1 finishes Goomy off. Irida doesn't like us bullying her little brother, so we have to fight her as well. Unfortunately, I still had Drifloon at the front of my party, so I stay in to hit Hypnosis. Drifloon hasn't missed Hypnosis once yet. Glaceon can't move, so I switch to Weasel and get off an Aqua Jet. Glaceon misses another turn, and Weasel gets off an agile style then a strong Aqua Jet, but doesn't get the kill. Glaceon uses quick attack but was too drowsy for her next turn. Another Aqua Jet ends the battle. Before dealing with their problem, I also grab a Machop from the tunnels. Next up is Cleaver, and since I have to fight the Nobles at least once, after dodging a few attacks, I send in Psyduck. Cleaver immediately sets up a double hit which increases the damage of his next move by 50%, and Psyduck misses Hypnosis. Cleaver goes for a Stealth Rocks which now does damage. Psyduck will go down the next turn, but I don't want my team taking damage, so I stay in and Psyduck hits Hypnosis this time. Then Stealth Rocks damage takes it out. I send up Weasel who gets off a Water Pulse that knocks Cleaver out in one hit. How is Kricketune harder? After throwing some more perfume at him, he is purified. While at the Grand Tree Arena, I also catch a Scyther. And now I can head to the Crimson Mirelands. Oh. Yup, this is going to be a problem every time before moving on to a new area. For this, I'll just be completing the research tasks as normal, but I'll separate those Pokemon from my encounters. While doing some research tasks, I'll grab a few more encounters, one of which being this magnificent creature right here. I usually ban Gyarados, but with abilities no longer being a thing, it doesn't feel as broken. After a few balls, I actually managed to catch it, however it exceeds my current level cap. I also grab a Dustox. Before heading for the next area, there's another battle with Akari. Akari leads with Mime Jr. and Machop happens to be my selected Pokemon. Mime Jr. moves first, but luckily it goes for an Iron Defense. I have no clue what I was thinking, as instead of switching out, I go for a Bullet Punch. It doesn't kill. Mime Jr. uses Zen Headbutt, so goodbye Machop. I switch into Weasel and take out Mime with an Aqua Jet. Pikachu comes out, but I get to move first, so I switch into Kricketune. Pikachu uses Thundershock, and it paralyzes. Kricketune is paralyzed, and Pikachu uses a quick attack, and then the Thundershock, leaving it on 10 HP. Kricketune is paralyzed again and goes down to Thundershock. And this is the Pokemon that killed 3 of my encounters. All my remaining Pokemon are weak to Electric, so I switch to Drifloon and go for Hypnosis, which doesn't fail to hit. Pikachu was too drowsy to move. Confusion does over half, and Thundershock does over half. Drifloon gets to move next, so not taking any risks, a strong Confusion ends Pikachu. Akari of all people took 2 of my Pokemon. Onwards to the Crimson Mirelands, I decide to hold off on my encounters for the time being but catch a Carnivine on the way to the Slaceon ruins. Here we meet an old racist and get bailed out of an awkward conversation by Volo. Drifloon naturally hits his first Hypnosis and Togepi is too drowsy to move. Confusion does over half, and with Togepi missing another turn, an Agile Confusion takes Togepi down. Gible comes out and gets off a Twister. Drifloon's Hypnosis hits once again. Gible can't move and is taken out by an Agile style then a strong Confusion. On a quest to convince Calaba that there are things more deserving of hate, we come across the most pointless characters in any main series Pokemon game. Drifloon takes Toxicroak down with 1 Confusion. I'm not even sure if the crit mattered. As much as I love this game, I cannot for the life of me think why these characters exist. With the level cap now increased, I can now add Gyarados to the team and begin my catching spree. One of my encounters ends up being the Stun Tank, which I was actually able to catch but was way above the level cap. I also catch a Hippopotas. We now need to put down Ursalana. Gyarados uses a Water Pulse to do about 40%, and Ursalana hits a Critical Slash to do a lot of damage. If you haven't seen Ursalana's stats, they're insane. So I decide to stay in to hit a strong Water Pulse, which misses the kill. Ursalana brings Gyarados down. Scyther comes out to finish off Ursalana with an Aerial Ace. I managed to lose Gyarados in the first battle I had with him. Also, while setting up base camp, I underestimate some Stunky and Scyther gets taken out by a combination of Poison Gas and Venoshock. This must be a personal best for how many Pokemon I've lost compared to how long I've been playing. On the way to the Brave Arena, I managed to catch a Golbat. Time to call Lilligant. Dodging her attacks is slightly more difficult than Cleaver, but once you get used to the attack pattern, it becomes pretty straightforward. For this battle, I send in Golbat. Lilligant moves first using an Energy Ball, and Golbat goes for an Agile Air Cutter, which misses. Lilligant's next Energy Ball crits, and I once again use an Agile Air Cutter, which does a lot of damage. But I didn't realize that I wouldn't get another turn this time till Lilligant gets off an Energy Ball. Not taking any chances, I use a strong Air Cutter, taking Lilligant down. This is probably the closest you could come to losing this battle with a Golbat. After some more dodging and some more throwing, Lilligant calms down. Apparently this is what Calaba needed to realize that racism is wrong. Before leaving the Crimson Mirelands, I catch my last few encounters. One of which includes a Heracross, which I catch during a space-time distortion. Then I wrap up going on a research task spree so I can rank up, allowing me to go to the Cobalt Coastlands. Immediately stepping onto the beach, Irida ambushes me and forces me into another battle. Unfortunately, it was Drifloon who was selected, so I switched straight into Heracross. Heracross can move immediately, so I use Rock Smash on Glaceon, doing over half. Glaceon uses Quick Attack, then Eevee hits with the Baby Doll Eyes, and Glaceon can move once again using Ice Beam. Not wanting to take a risk, I use a strong Rock Smash, taking Glaceon out. Eevee seems to have vengeance on his mind as he hits a Quick Attack, then an Agile Quick Attack, and then yet another Quick Attack, bringing Heracross down. I keep losing all of my new Pokemon. I send out Drifloon and a couple of extra sensories to finish Eevee off. Battles are rare in this game, but I think on average I've lost at least one Pokemon in each one. A bit too late for that, Rita. Before moving on with the story, I get some encounters, some of which include a Perugly and then later a Dusclops. I also catch a Magneton in the Space-Time Distortion, then a Growlithe. We meet this unfortunate creature but discover that he has an active love life, unlike me. If that realization wasn't bad enough, I'm reminded that these characters exist. I take to the seas to drown my sorrows. Here I catch a Shellos, a Lumineon, and a Mantine. Heading into an active volcano, I also pick up a Magmar. Some Pokemon have exceeded the level cap, so I'm forced to switch up my team. After much build up, it's time for the fated battle against the Misfortune Sisters. I joke, but this battle can be pretty tough since we have 3 battles back to back. Clover starts off with Abomasnow, and I send out Growlithe as it has a type advantage. This doesn't matter as apparently Abomasnow outspeeds, hitting a strong energy ball, one-shotting Growlithe. I send out Dustox and it can use 2 consecutive Silver Winds, bringing Abomasnow down. I seem to have Carnivine selected as it was forced out on Coin's Toxicroak. Before even having a chance to switch out, Toxicroak uses Poison Jab, one-shotting Carnivine. An Agile Style and a strong Air Cutter takes Toxicroak out. I once again miss my chance to select my Pokemon, but luckily it's Hippopotas that gets sent out. Rhydon moves first to use a critical Stealth Rocks. I switch into Shellos and Rhydon once again gets a crit Stealth Rocks. Shellos uses Water Pulse to defeat Rhydon. Gengar comes out and spares Shellos' life, missing Hypnosis. I use this opportunity to switch to Golbat on Gengar's Hex. Golbat's able to use 2 bites in a row to finish Gengar off. At least we get an interesting connection between Agatha and Bertha. Growlithe, now Arcanine, begs us to give him amnesia so he can forget about ever seeing these poses. It would be cruel not to oblige. And this is probably the first somewhat hard Noble battle in my opinion. It starts off easy enough, just needing to dodge when he charges at you and then moving out of the middle, and we get our first opportunity to battle. I send in Mantine, forgetting about Arcanine's new typing, but Rock Slide misses. An Agile Water Pulse does about half and a regular one takes Arcanine down. This battle can get tough once Arcanine sets fire to the center, but once you realize that you can just stay in one part of the arena and dodge when an Arcanine attacks, you're fine. Dodging grants you invincibility frames, so it doesn't really matter which direction you dodge. Eventually we're able to grant Arcanine his wish, and his rage is quelled. Heading back to the base, we meet the one character that can actually make people miss the Misfortune Sisters. While I like Adaman, it's his fault that Melly's even talking to us, so I take my frustrations out on him. Unfortunately, I forget to change which Pokemon selected, so goodbye Hippopotas. I switch into Dustox and use an Agile Silver Wind on Leafeon, just missing the kill. Eevee gets off 2 quick attacks and then another Silver Wind brings Leafeon down. Eevee uses an Agile Style quick attack and then gets off a critical one. I switch into Magneton on quick attack and a single Flash Cannon takes Eevee out. At least we won't have to deal with Melly for a while. After completing some research tasks, we can continue to the next area. Arriving at the Coronet Highlands, I first catch myself a Yanmega. Our peace is short-lived as we're confronted by Melly once again. At least this time we have Ingo to deal with him. Onwards through Wayward Cave, we have a chance to fight Melly ourselves. Melly sends out Skuntank and I send out my own. I can move first, so I use a flamethrower and Melly misses his. I hit another flamethrower while Melly misses another. This time I miss my flamethrower, but Melly hits his one, and it also crits. My next flamethrower hits and Melly's Skuntank goes down. Truly riveting gameplay. In the Ancient Quarry, I catch a Bronzong and then further up an Ursaring. After training my Pokemon a bit, we're ready to fight Ingo. Ingo starts with Machoke and I send out Golbat. Golbat moves first, knocking Machoke out with one Air Cutter. Tangler hits Stun Spore and then Ancient Power does a lot to Golbat. I switch out to Magneton and use a Flash Cannon, just missing the kill. Tangler uses an Agile Energy Ball, then a regular one. I switch into Stuntank and use a Poison Jab to take Tangler down. Gliscor comes out and uses a quick attack into a Mud Bomb to take Skuntank down. I send out Mantine and hit a Hydro Pump, finishing off Gliscor. To be honest, one death was probably one of the better outcomes. With help from Sneasler, great name, I can scale the cliffs to get to the Moonview Arena. On the way, I catch a Rotom. Melly wants to fight again, but I can't be too upset this time as he uses Team Skull from Explorers of Sky. Kinda. and Dustox was selected on the wheel, so I send him out to immediately get melted by Skuntank's flamethrower. And Golbat uses an agile air cutter on Stuntank, and Hypnosis from Zubat misses Golbat. Another air cutter hits Skuntank while Zubat and Skorupi don't do anything. Stuntank hits a critical Night Slash and I need to switch. I send out Mansign and Skuntank's Poison Jab does over half. Water Pulse finishes Skuntank off. Skorupi uses Bite, bringing Mantine low, and Zubat hits Hypnosis. Skorupi somehow gets another turn and Venoshock ends Mantine. Bronzong's next and it one-shots both Skorupi and Zubat with Confusion. Being insufferable wasn't enough for Melly, he even takes 2 of my Pokemon. But with that out of the way, we now have to fight Electrode, who in my opinion is one of the hardest nobles. You have to constantly move, meaning there isn't much room to hit it with bombs. Unless of course I battle it, and Electrode has an insane speed stat, meaning it will likely always get the first hit. Also, if I haven't mentioned already, if I die, that counts as a wipe. I start the fight by trying to get a few hits while I have a chance. I'm able to do about an 8th before our first opportunity to battle it. I send out Perugly and Electrode starts off with a Thunder Wave. Perugly can't move due to paralysis. A Thunder brings Perugly right into red and Perugly misses Hypnosis. A second Thunder puts Perugly down. I send out Yanmega and use Silver Wind doing half. And Electrode shows mercy by missing a Thunder Wave. One more Silver Wind tires it out. And this gives me the chance to get Electrode below 70%, but it's clear my team isn't well equipped to deal with this. It starts off shaky with me being hit twice in a short time frame while doing little damage. But I start to make some progress while Electrode drops Voltorb bombs around me. Eventually I get another chance to send out a Pokemon, but I don't want to take any more risks. I don't manage to do much during this time, but I do bring Electrode under half. I'm able to get a few more hits here and there, but now the field's become too hectic, so I'm forced to just run around. The next time I'm able to send a Pokemon, I'm only able to do about 10th, and Electrode almost hits me with a sneak attack. I'm starting to become a bit more confident, so I try and get a few more hits where I can, and the next time Electrode gets confused, I'm able to bring it below quarter. But my confidence turns into overconfidence as I get hit by multiple attacks in a row, now only being able to take one more hit. But we're so close. I decide to wait until it's confused again, and it looks like it only needs a couple more hits. There's so much going on the field now, but I managed to eke it out, and Electrode becomes confused, allowing me to get the final few hits in. Genuinely a pretty tough fight. You know, I really like the attention to detail in this game. Out of all of the new characters, Melly's one of the few I don't recognize as being an ancestor of anyone, which makes sense since no one would breed with Melly. Akari artificially extends the game's playtime. She leads with Mr. Mime and I send out Bronzong. Mr. Mime misses Hypnosis and is taken down by Bronzong's Flash Cannon. Pikachu comes out and immediately gets off a Thunderbolt, doing just under half. I switch out to Magneton on Thunderbolt, and Magneton defeats Pikachu with an agile style than a regular tri-attack. Staravia can't really do much to Magneton but brings it into red with the earlier help from Pikachu. It goes down to a strong Thunderbolt. Moving on to the Alabaster Icelands, Irida makes us meet her father, which is a bit forward if you ask me. He welcomes me by using his Glalie and Frostless to massacre my Dusclops before I even have a chance to switch out. I send in Magneton and Glalie for some reason gets another hit to use Crunch, with Frostless following behind to use a Hex, putting Magneton in red. I really like the combat changes for the most part, but these situations are honestly BS. I stay in and accidentally use an Agile Flash Cannon on Glalie, and Frostless takes Magneton out with Hex. Bronzong comes out and immediately gets hit with Crunch. I stay in to take Glalie down with Flash Cannon and Frostless finishes off Bronzong. I switch into Yanmega and a strong Ancient Power ends Frostlass. And there goes half my team. This would be a good time to look for some more encounters. I catch a Glalie myself, a Misdreavus, and a Sizzle from a Space-Time Distortion. Misdreavus is the only one that fits within the level cap. Making my way to the temple, I also catch a Sneasel. You know, I'm not really a fan of Game Freak's decision to make us chase a child all over the neighborhood and then into her home. But here we are, and now we have to fight her and her insane team. Sabi sends out Rhyperior, Magmortar, and Electivire. I send out Ursaring. Magmortar moves first but only looks around. This gives Ursaring a chance to knock out Electivire with Bulldoze. Rhyperior uses an agile high horsepower while Magmortar looks around, and Rhyperior moves again to use a high horsepower to take out Ursaring. I send out Lumineon to use Hydro Pump, and it misses. The one chance it had to be good, and it messed up. Magmortar uses an agile poison gas and Rhyperior hits a high horsepower. Magmortar gets to move again using Flamethrower, luckily keeping Lumineon barely alive. Lumineon hits Hydro Pump to defeat Rhyperior, but poison damage finishes her off. I send out Weasel and a strong Water Pulse ends Magmortar. Honestly, not the worst it could have gone. Further up, we're confronted by Sabi's caretaker. Miss Dravis uses Shadow Ball to do over half, and Bravery hits back with a strong Brave Bird, knocking out Miss Dravis. The recall damage also finishes Bravery off. We can now get Avalug's favorite food and face off against the absolute unit himself. This one's one of the tougher nobles, but I still think it's easier than Electrode once you've memorized the attack patterns. I send out Sizzle for my first battle with Avalug and hit with a 4x super effective strong Iron Head, but somehow it doesn't get the kill. Avalug uses an agile earth power into a regular one, and another Iron Head tires Avalug out. I'm making some pretty good progress, but I don't know if I was overconfident or if it was just muscle memory, but I send out Yanmega to start another battle. I need to commit, so I stay in to use Ancient Power, which did more than Sizzle's Iron Head, and Avalug takes Yanmega out with a Blizzard. This was very avoidable. A Water Pulse from Weasel allows me to throw the remaining bombs, quelling the final Noble. Thanks to all of our hard work putting the Nobles at ease, we're given an all-expenses-paid trip to a secluded resort. Of course, when we get there, we find it to be double booked, so now we have to house share with either Adaman or Irida, in one of the most arbitrary ways to decide the legendary. We go with Irida as she owes us for how many Pokemon her clan has taken from me. Now, you may have noticed I haven't really bothered with any alpha since my first Bibarel blunder. That's because now we have the chance to catch 3 strong alpha Pokemon from the 3 lakes who would be really useful during the upcoming battles. Pseudo-legendaries are banned in my runs anyway. Onwards to Lake Verity in the Crimson Mirelands, we come across our next alpha, Overquill. An agile high horsepower and some damage from recoil is enough for me to catch it. In the Alabaster Icelands, we head to Lake Acuity where we find Zoroark. With Snarl lowering Snorlax's attack, a crunch brings Zoroark low enough to catch with a Great Ball. Not wanting my vacation to end, I go to Silene to ask for an extension, but she tells me to take it up with Kamado. So we head to the Coronet Highlands. Benny really hates covering my shifts, so he starts a battle. Benny sends out Miss Magius and I send out Overquill. Miss Magius hits first with a Power Gem and Overquill uses an Agile Dark Pulse. I take this as an opportunity to switch, so I send out Sizzle. Sizzle gets to move immediately, getting off a Bullet Punch, taking out Miss Magius. Sneasler is next, and since it can move twice, I use an Agile Bullet Punch. Sneasler hits with Close Combat, doing well over half, and I switch into Luxray. Close Combat once again does over half. Luxray misses Thunderfang, and another Close Combat finishes it off. Back into Sizzle, and Iron Head takes Sneasler out. Gallade comes out and uses Swords Dance. Sizzle uses an Agile Bullet Punch into a strong Iron Head to defeat Gallade. Gardevoir hits Psychic, not getting a kill, and he gets to move again. But it spares Sizzle's life using Calm Mind. Another Agile Bullet Punch into a strong Iron Head ends the battle. Maybe Benny was trying to give us a warning as Kamado takes us asking for personal time a bit too personally, and he starts a battle to assert dominance. I send out Snorlax and Kamado's Braviary. Braviary moves first, hitting Esper Wing, and Snorlax does over half with Crunch. Kamado uses a Max Potion and a strong Crunch takes Braviary out. Kamado's own Snorlax is out and it goes for a Zen Headbutt into a Giga Impact which brings Snorlax down. I send out Sneasel and have 3 chances to attack. I start off using a Swords Dance and then use an Agile Close Combat knocking Snorlax out. Clefable moves first, immediately using Psychic which one-shots Sneasel. An Agile Bullet Punch into Iron Head takes Clefable down. Golem uses an Agile Rock Slide into Stealth Rock to bring Sizzle below half. I send out Overquill and a strong Aqua Tail grants us some PTO. However, it's short-lived as we get attacked by something that's out of this game's age rating. The battle starts off with Palkia using a strong Earth Power, one-shotting Overquill. Why can't I have nice things? Sizzle uses an X-Scissor to do some damage and a single Ultra Ball is all I need to capture the God of Space. We get a message from another deity warning us of the true final villain. But since it's considered to be a false god by society, we have to go on a mini quest to detain it. I should also mention that at some point before Palkia, I actually managed to catch the gatekeeping Electivire. But it exceeds all the level caps I set for this game, so I just avoided the encounter. I knew trying to detain a god was a bad idea, as facing these sisters could have been entirely avoided. Rhydon immediately gets off a high horsepower on Shellos, so I switch to Buizel and use Aqua Tail, missing the kill. Rhydon uses an Agile Bulldoze, then a regular Bulldoze, killing one of my honorary starters. I send out Sizzle and avenge Weasel with Iron Head. Gengar comes out to hit Hypnosis, so I switch to Glalie and Gengar hits another Hypnosis. Next into Zoroark, and he actually gets to move first. A strong Shadow Ball one-shots Gengar. Why do these characters even exist? They just take my Pokemon. What does that even mean? What were they doing that even remotely resembled helping? We frack a mountain for its natural resources and then head back to base to make a special Pokeball that's red on both sides. On the way out to Jubilife, Cognita suggests that I bring Palkia along with me, but Legendaries abandoned my runs, so I guess it wasn't a suggestion. Bringing Palkia with me, Cognita seems satisfied and walks away. Maybe I can sneak Shellos back on the team. So far, so good. Back to the temple, and alright, it seems the game really wants me to break my rules. Fine, let's have it their way. I'll allow myself to use Palkia for this fight. With Palkia having remembered the basics of CQC, we're ready to fight Origin Dialga. I remember this fight being pretty difficult as Dialga can turn the whole field into hazards and has an ability to charge right into you, so let's see how it goes. I'm hit almost immediately by Dialga's teleportation attack, but managed to dodge all of its Draco Meteors, getting off a lot of bombs in the process. Next up, he starts using Shockwaves, being one of his easier attacks, yet I still manage to get hit. Pushing through, I get some more bombs on it. Next up, Dialga starts to attack using rows of Draco Meteors, which aren't too hard to dodge, but the lingering particles make that part of the arena dangerous. I'm able to dodge most of these attacks, lowering his health even more, but suddenly my controller disconnects. A fourth wall-breaking attack by Dialga, truly rivaling that of Psycho Mantis. He now starts using Shockwave, and with the addition of being trapped in the smaller section of the arena, because of the rows of Draco Meteors, these attacks are pretty hard to dodge. Thankfully, Dialga decides to lay off and sets up his finisher, allowing me to have a chance to send in the Pokemon after a few more throws. Oh. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really have any rules prepared in case this happened, and I can't remember the last time I actually saved. Technically, I'm supposed to battle these bosses at least once, but I've not really been in a situation where I've defeated the boss before even given the chance. I think with the amazing skill I just displayed, that this should count. Look, I was going to use Palkia anyway, so worst case scenario, I would have just lost that. And let's be honest, no one cares about this particular fight anyway. Just let me have it. And that's the end of the game. Yay. Of course it's not that easy. Back at base, Volo decides the best way to celebrate is by sending me out into the wild to catch Pokemon I can't even use. The first one I try and catch is Heatran on the Cobalt Coastlands. And that's because while in his cavern, I can get a whole lot of mud. Apparently I need this special mud. These special mud balls can be thrown at Pokemon to stun them, which give you an opportunity to catch them without needing to battle. And there's Heatran. Onto the Coronet Highlands, my next target is Cresselia. And then after throwing a bunch of spoiled apricorns, one ball is all it takes. In the Obsidian Fieldlands, I use the same strategy to catch Mesprit. And then in the Crimson Mirelands, Azelf. And by the time I get to Uxie in the Alabaster Icelands, I'm running out of mud. And the last ball doesn't work, so battling it is. After an Iron Head, I catched in the first ball. Back in Snowpoint Temple, we head down to catch our final legendary, and this one is a forced battle. Regigigas is the only poor soul in this game that has to keep its ability, so we have 5 free turns to attempt to catch it. Sizzle uses 2 Iron Heads to bring Regigigas' health low, and while the first ball breaks, the second Ultra Ball gets us our final legendary. But it's not the final plate. We get our last play by fighting Kamado one last time, and with how lacking our team is and his updated roster, this battle's pretty tough. I send out Shellos to immediately get killed by Golem's strong Thunder Punch. Glalie strong style Blizzard manages to one-shot Golem. Heracross comes out to use Pin Missile, giving Glalie a chance to switch out. I switch into Sizzle and Heracross uses Close Combat, doing over half. Aerial Ace knocks it out. The Ace Snorlax puts an end to Sizzle's long service with Fire Punch. I send out my final honorary starter, Drifloon, and true to his nature, he hits Hypnosis. Drifloon sets up a Calm Mind as Snorlax hits Zen Headbutt. Drifloon now hits an extra sensory to deal a bit of damage, and Snorlax hits another Zen Headbutt. Now Drifloon has the opportunity to use an agile extra sensory into a strong one, taking out Kamado's ace. Clefable comes out using a Calm Mind, then gives Drifloon a well-deserved break by using Psychic. I send out Magmar to hit a Poison Gas, then a strong Fire Blast. Clefable hits back with a strong Water Pulse, taking Magmar down in one hit. Zoroark's out in a nasty plot into Shadow Ball knocks Clefable out. Last up is Braviary, and he misses an Esper Wing, which allows Zoroark to use a strong style Shadow Ball, getting us the final plate. There's only one thing left to do, but before that, my team really needs some rebuilding. And luckily there are still a few encounters on the table, including 2 more alphas. I first head to the Cobalt Coastlands to grab a Chansey and attempt to get my next alpha. I use some smoke bombs to get close and use a heavy ball which manages to catch Walrein in the first try. And next up I head to the Coronet Highlands where I snipe a Magnezone hovering around and spot my final alpha. Similar to Walrein, I sneak up on Steelix using smoke balls and then completely whiff my backstroke technique. But Steelix seems to really want to be part of my final team. All that's left is to stand up to Volo for being his errand boy throughout most of the game. Volo leads with Spiritomb and I send out Chansey. Spiritomb can't really do much to Chansey, so I set up a Calm Mind as Spiritomb uses Dark Pulse. Next up, Chansey uses a Draining Kiss to recover back her HP, while Volo wastes the full restore. Another Draining Kiss and Spiritomb misses a Hypnosis. The Hypnosis would have made this a bit more annoying, but there was a low chance of losing Chansey here. Chansey uses another Draining Kiss, taking Spiritomb out. Lucario's out and the last thing I needed to do is use Bulk Up. But a Bullet Punch later, of course it does. And now I need to coerce Lucario to use Close Combat, so I set up a Calm Mind, making it unable to take me out with 2 Bullet Punches. And it does, taking Chansey down. I send out Steelix. Unfortunately, because of Bulk Up, Lucario's defenses are normal, so I'm not too confident that Bulldoze kills. I risk the 5% miss chance and high horsepower hit, knocking Lucario out. Arcanine's next and it needs to use at least 2 Raging Furies to kill, while only having an 85% hit chance. Okay, it hits an Agile one, getting another turn, maybe the next one will miss? Nope, goodbye Steelix. Walrein avenges Steelix using Water Pulse. Roserade comes out, sparing Walrein's life using Spikes. I'm not too sure what the AI was thinking. A strong Style Ice Beam one-shots Roserade. Togekiss comes out using Calm Mind into Moonblast and I need to switch. I switch to Magnezone on the Moonblast and Flash Cannon does just under half. Togekiss goes for another Moonblast and not wanting to take any risks, Magnezone uses a strong Flash Cannon, finishing Togekiss off. Finally it's Garchomp and it doesn't even wait a second to use Earth Power, bringing Magnezone down. I switch into Walrein and before doing anything else, I make sure that the wheel is set on Glalie. Not many people seem to know this, but this is what determines which Pokemon is sent out during the Giratina fight. And a strong Style Ice Beam ends this phase of the battle. Volo summons Giratina to show me an example of a true errand boy. As expected, Glalie is sent out. Giratina starts off hitting an Aura Sphere, but Glalie somehow manages to survive. Glalie uses an Agile Icicle Crash, gaining a turn to use a strong Blizzard, leaving Giratina on just a sliver of HP. Another Aura Sphere puts an end to Glalie. I send out Walrein and Giratina has another chance to move using Aura Sphere. Walrein too manages to survive. Walrein starts by using an Agile Baby Doll Eyes and finishes Giratina off using Ice Beam. Of course it's not over yet as Giratina reverts to its origin form and we start the third phase of this battle. Giratina uses an Agile Aura Sphere which takes Walrein out. Finally Zoroark comes out and with Giratina still at full HP, does he even have a chance? No moves allow me to move twice thanks to the earlier Agile style move, so Zoroark uses Shadow Ball to do just under half. Giratina uses Dragon Claw and Zoroark actually manages to survive the hit thanks to the earlier attack drop from Walrein. And a strong Style Shadow Ball puts an end to Giratina and the Nuzlocke. Wow, I beat Volo on my first try. Yup, my first try, and I won't hear otherwise. This is probably the highest death count I've had in any of my Nuzlockes. I was expecting this game to be hard, but not to the point that I have a pasture full of dead Pokemon. I really enjoy the new changes Game Freak made for this game, and I really hope they build upon it in a future sequel or spin-off, but it's not really built for Nuzlockes. While many deaths were my fault, there were many moments that just felt unfair, as it felt there was nothing I could do to avoid a death. Just accept it's happening and select a sacrifice. Thanks for watching. I may attempt another challenge run for this game, if not Nuzlocke, but I think I may go back to traditional games for now. So please look out for that in the future.